is born. When our facades are torn, pain gives birth to the promise ahead.
Thank you, sir. May I have another? Thank you, sir. May I have another? Thank you, sir. May I have another?
Seeking the Heart of God, next on So What?
Hi, I'm Chris Dorman.
And I'm Don Waite.
Welcome back to So What? How many of us go through our Christian life like Kevin Bacon did in that opening scene? I did. I spent many, many years in the wilderness being really angry and confused, going through one difficult thing after another. And at first, I tried to be strong in the Lord. And I would go, okay, God, thank you for that really painful circumstance. I know you're doing something. I don't know what, but I know you're doing something. And then, something else would happen. I'd go, okay, God, thank you. I had this stoic notion, the stoic mentality that I just couldn't show how much I was hurting. I had to have on this brave face.
Right, you just had to grind it out somehow.
And
right?
somehow that was spiritual.
Yeah, when life is hard, when the Lord puts all these really hard things in life, pain, the loss of people, the loss of relationships, friendships, through circumstances, through death, through so many things that get thrown at us. And life is hard. And I didn't know as a young Christian what life was really going to be like as a believer. No. I didn't know that Jesus was saying, hey, I guarantee you that there's going to be trouble. Life's full of trouble.
I don't know why we have this idea when we become Christians that somehow we're immune to the suffering that goes on in the world. I don't know why, because the Bible never says that. Jesus said that you're going to have trouble in this life. Right. Jesus said, you better trust me today because, there's enough trouble in today. Don't worry about tomorrow. Yeah. We are assured on every page of Scripture that life is hard and that we are going to suffer just like people who are not Christians suffer. We lose spouses. We lose jobs. We lose our health. We lose the ability to work and provide for our families. Yes. We lose children.
Throughout our lives.
We do. We suffer. We suffer like everybody else does.
You know what? In fact, I think it was Tozer, Chris, that said that the only relief that Jesus had from suffering was death itself.
Yeah, that's right. He was hounded from birth, remember? Forced out of his homeland, had to live in Egypt, right? Because they wanted to kill him. Herod wanted to kill him. He was hounded. And the only time he was free was death. I was preparing for this podcast and I was looking at 2 Corinthians 12, which is a passage of Scripture we've looked at several times already in this series. But that's the verse where Paul is talking about he had these great heavenly visions and God, to keep him from being conceited, afflicted him with horrific, painful suffering. And the language of the text is quite graphic if you look at it in Greek. And Paul's pleading with God to take it away. And God says, okay, no problem, I will. I'll heal you, right?
No, not at all.
No.
Nope. In fact, you're gonna reside with that, and you need to learn that my grace is sufficient for you. That sounds so harsh to me.
Doesn't it?
Right on the onset, on the surface, you're like, wait, what?
What? Does that sound like a loving God? Imagine your kids are going through something, right? They're going through a really tough thing, and they say, I really need help. And you could help them. You say, nah, my grace is sufficient for you. It's enough. It's enough. It's enough that you live in this house. That's enough. It's enough that I provide for you. That's enough. And you're like, what? What? But that's what Jesus said to him. My grace is sufficient for you, Paul, for my power is made perfect in weakness. And then we know that rest, he says, therefore I will boast all the more gladly for, so Christ may rest on me. And then I read something, it seems like for the first time, even though I read it 100,000 times, he said, therefore I delight in insults and persecutions and hardships. And it's like,
he delights?
What? So I look up the word delight, and delight means delight.
It actually means that.
It means prefer. It means to take joy in. It means to welcome. And it's like, what? Hold it. Come on. We know what Paul went through. We've quoted it. We've talked about it several times already in this series. Go back and read 2 Corinthians yourself. He went through some terrible, terrible things that you and I have never experienced and never will by the grace of God.
Well, somebody would say, well, that was the Apostle Paul.
Right.
The problem with that, thinking like that, is joy actually is a command to all of us.
And this is a hard message to tell you, beloved. It's a hard thing to say. We're commanded to have joy. Just like we're commanded not to fornicate, we're commanded not to use the Lord's name in vain, we're commanded not to murder, we are commanded to have joy.
You're like, well, how can I fulfill that command?
How can I be obedient to that?
When my life is filled with all of this crud, how can I rejoice? How can God tell me to have joy in the middle of that?
I'm disabled. I can't provide for my family. I'm worthless to my family.
I lost my job and I've been unemployed for 3 years, and I'm on government assistance, and I can't do anything for myself.
My husband left me. What am I supposed to do? I've lost a child. What am I supposed to do?
I have a terminal illness, and I'm wasting away in a hospital bed.
I have a chronic illness that I'll never feel better from. I'll never recover from, and I will suffer in agony for the rest of my life. Paul says, I delight in those circumstances. I welcome those circumstances, for when I am weak, then I am strong. When he stops relying on himself, when he surrenders to his God and trusts his God, he's at his strongest and he's at his most useful in the hands of his Maker. Beloved, when I was in the throes of my personal crisis that I've talked about in a podcast and several podcasts, I was struggling so badly, and I was so angry at God, and I was so sure that God had just forgotten about me, that God was just continuing to punish me and inflict me with useless sufferings for absolutely no reason whatsoever, that there was nothing redeeming about it at all. And then one day, as I got another bit of really terrifically bad news, I said, okay, God, I'm not going to shake my fist at you today. I'm not going to curse your name. I'm going to stop hating you, and I'm going to trust you. I'm going to trust you even though I don't know how to do that. Lord, I believe. Help me in my unbelief. Now, my circumstances didn't change, but how I saw my circumstances changed radically. And I am here before you today because of that time in the wilderness, because of that pain that I went through, that horrific pain. God was transforming me. The God that I thought had forgotten me, the God that I thought had put me on a shelf and was done with me, the God that I thought that didn't love me anymore and was punishing me, was doing none of those things. He was forming Christ in me.
And that's it, isn't it? He's forming Christ in us, Chris. That's the whole point. When God saves us, he restores us to a relationship with him and conforms us to the image of his Son. That is Romans 8:29. He has a purpose to make us more like him. And you know what? There's no easy way to get from point A to point B. He is going to take us through some of the most horrendously difficult things in our lives. But the end goal is in his love, in his mercy, in his wisdom, and in his grace to us. He is transforming us day by day into the image of his Son, Jesus Christ. And when we can start to get our arms around that, and as you said, we then make a decision. We're going to plant our flag there, and we say, you know what?
And we're not going to grin and bear it.
No.
We're going to pray for joy in our circumstances.
And when we don't believe, we're going to say, Lord, help my unbelief.
Help my unbelief. But we're not going to have a facade of strength.
No.
Why? It's not true. It's not honest. Be real. God knows the truth. God knows your heart.
We have to learn to live with our issues.
Beloved,
we have issues.
And beloved, we're just, unfortunately, some of the things we have in our lives, we're going to have until we die. We are. We're going to suffer with some things in our lives until we're dead. It's just the way it is. But is Christ's grace sufficient? Jesus said it is. And he told Paul in the midst of his real torment, my grace is sufficient for you, Paul, for my power is made perfect in weakness. Beloved, this is a hard message to give. But if you don't trust your God, really trust in him and delight in him, and find your greatest joy and satisfaction in him, in the midst of the most difficult of circumstances, you will never draw near to his heart. And that's what this series is all about, drawing near to the heart of God. What was Calvary all about? What is Easter all about? It's about hope. It's about rebirth. You have been reborn. Rejoice in it. All of it. Even those things that are confusing and difficult. Have joy, beloved, for he has overcome the world. Happy Easter. Thank you for tuning in, my friends, and I'll talk to you next week.
See you soon.